What if the most powerful teachings of Jesus were never actually lost, but simply hidden behind translation? What if 7 original Aramaic words carried meanings so deep that they could completely transform the way you understand prayer, peace, forgiveness, truth, and even your relationship with God? For centuries, millions have read the Scriptures without hearing the very sounds that first came from the lips of Jesus. Today, that changes. Stay with me until the end, because the 7th word may become the one that changes your spiritual life forever. Imagine standing on the hills of Galilee nearly 2,000 years ago. There are no churches, no stained glass windows, and no theology books. There is only Jesus, speaking directly to ordinary people in the language of their hearts. That language was Aramaic, and every word carried layers of meaning that extended far beyond simple vocabulary. Modern languages usually define words with precision. Aramaic invites experience. One word can describe an action, an inner state, a spiritual reality, and a living relationship with God at the same time. This is one reason why many of the sayings of Jesus feel deeper when explored through their original language. The first word is Abwun. Most people have learned it simply as Father. Yet Abwun carries a far richer meaning. It points toward the divine source, the origin of life, the one from whom every breath continually flows. It is less about authority and more about living relationship. When Jesus taught his disciples to begin prayer with Abwun, he was inviting them to remember that God was never distant. Every breath became a reminder of divine presence. Every heartbeat became evidence that the Creator was already near. This changes the emotional foundation of prayer. Instead of approaching God through fear, people approach through belonging. Instead of trying to earn acceptance, they awaken to a relationship that already exists. Notice how differently anxiety feels when every breath reminds you that you are connected to the source of life itself. This understanding quietly transforms fear into confidence, not because life circumstances suddenly disappear, but because your awareness shifts from separation to communion. The Gospel of Matthew preserves this prayer, but hearing Abwun in its original sound allows us to glimpse the living atmosphere in which Jesus first spoke these sacred words. And this is only the beginning. Each of the remaining 6 words will uncover another layer that has remained hidden beneath centuries of translation, revealing a message that continues to speak directly to the human heart. In just a few moments, we'll pause together for a short guided prayer, using one of these original Aramaic words exactly as Jesus taught, allowing you to experience these teachings instead of merely learning about them. The second word is Malcuta. Most translations render it simply as kingdom. For many generations, this created the impression of a distant destination waiting somewhere beyond this life. Yet when Jesus spoke Malcuta, his listeners understood something much more immediate. Malcuta describes divine reign, the living reality where God's wisdom becomes active within human consciousness. It is not merely a location, it is a condition of awakened life. This helps explain why Jesus could say that the kingdom was already among the people listening to him. He was not pointing toward a distant future. He was inviting them to recognize a present reality. Think about how often anxiety comes from believing that peace belongs somewhere else. We imagine that security will come after our problems disappear, after our finances improve, after relationships become perfect, or after life finally slows down. But Malcuta reverses that perspective. Peace is not postponed. Divine authority is not postponed. God's presence is not postponed. They become available the moment the heart awakens. Suddenly, prayer is no longer begging for heaven to arrive. Prayer becomes opening our awareness to the kingdom already surrounding us. That realization changes every ordinary moment. A difficult conversation, a silent morning, a season of uncertainty. Even there, Malcuta remains present. The message of Jesus was never built upon hopeless waiting. It was built upon awakening. Every word we discover today moves us another step toward that awakening. If this teaching has opened a new perspective for you, our Aramaic Wisdom Guide can help you continue this journey. After all, true knowledge sets us free. You'll find the link in the comments. And the best is yet to come in the next chapters. You'll discover what could change everything for you. Abwun. Today I come before you with an open heart. Teach me to hear your voice above every fear and every distraction. Let your presence become more real than my doubts, and let your wisdom guide every decision I make. Remind me that I was never created to live separated from your love. Help me walk in your peace, trust your direction, and recognize your kingdom within me every single day. Amen. The third Aramaic word is Shbaq. Nearly every English Bible translates this word as forgive. While forgiveness is certainly included, the original Aramaic reaches much deeper than a legal act of pardon. Shbaq literally carries the idea of releasing, loosening, untying, or allowing something to be set free. Imagine a tightly knotted rope that has restricted movement for years. The purpose of Shbaq is not merely to ignore the knot, but to patiently untangle it until freedom returns. This completely changes how we understand many teachings of Jesus. When Jesus taught his followers to pray, forgiveness was never presented as a transaction that God reluctantly granted after enough pleading. Instead, he revealed a divine process of liberation. The chains that bind the heart begin to loosen, allowing God's original design to emerge once again. Think about how much anxiety is sustained by old memories. A painful conversation from years ago still controls present emotions. A betrayal still influences today's relationships. Even personal failures continue whispering accusations long after they happened. These hidden knots quietly shape our lives. But Shbaq invites another path. Instead of carrying yesterday into tomorrow, Jesus teaches the soul to release what no longer belongs there. Every act of genuine forgiveness unties another spiritual knot. Every surrendered burden creates room for peace to return. Perhaps this explains why people who truly forgive often appear lighter, calmer, and more joyful. Their circumstances may not have changed overnight, but something inside has become free. The wisdom of Shbaq reminds us that spiritual freedom rarely begins by changing the world around us. More often, it begins by allowing God to untie what has remained hidden within us for years. The fourth word may be one of the most misunderstood expressions preserved from the teachings of Jesus. It is Kushta. Most modern readers simply associate truth with correct information. We think of facts, doctrines, or statements that can be proven true or false. Yet Aramaic paints a much richer picture. Kushta describes truth that is alive. It is truth expressed through character, integrity, authenticity, and faithful living. In other words, truth is not something a person merely possesses. Truth becomes something a person embodies. This explains why Jesus never separated spiritual knowledge from daily life. A person may memorize countless verses and still fail to walk in Kushta. Another person may quietly live with compassion, honesty, humility, and mercy while carrying the living expression of divine truth. Religion often measures information. Kushta measures transformation. Imagine entering every conversation asking one simple question. Does what I am about to say reflect Kushta? Suddenly, words become more careful. Relationships become healthier. Conflicts lose much of their destructive power. Even moments of silence become meaningful, because truth no longer depends upon winning arguments. This is especially important in a world filled with endless opinions, constant information, and daily confusion. We have never possessed more knowledge, yet many people have never felt more uncertain. The wisdom of Jesus points us back to something remarkably simple. Live what is true. Allow your thoughts, your words, and your actions to agree with one another. That harmony produces an inner authority no external circumstance can remove. When a heart lives in Kushta, fear gradually loses its influence, because there is no longer a divided life to defend. Authenticity replaces performance, and peace quietly begins to grow where anxiety once ruled. Perhaps you're wondering why these original teachings remained hidden for so long. That's why we created the Aramaic Wisdom Guide. Because true knowledge sets us free. The link is waiting for you in the comments. The fifth Aramaic word is Nura. Many people simply translate it as light, but Nura carries a meaning far richer than physical illumination. It speaks of the divine light that awakens awareness, dissolves confusion, and reveals reality as God intended it to be. Think about how Jesus described himself as the light of the world. His listeners were not imagining a physical brightness surrounding him. They understood that he was speaking about the light capable of awakening the human soul from spiritual sleep. How often do we search for answers while walking in darkness created by fear, disappointment, or uncertainty? We assume the solution is more information, more effort, or greater control. Yet Nura teaches something different. Before direction comes revelation. Before wisdom comes illumination. When the heart is filled with divine light, decisions become clearer because fear no longer controls the process. The path itself may remain challenging, but the traveler begins to see with different eyes. This is why Jesus constantly invited people to open their eyes rather than merely changing their circumstances. Once light enters the heart, the same situation often appears completely different. Now imagine making Nura part of your daily life. Each morning, before checking your phone or beginning your responsibilities, quietly breathe and speak Nura several times with intention. Ask God to illuminate your thoughts before the noise of the world reaches your mind. Do not expect dramatic emotions every day. Light often works gradually. A room does not argue with darkness, it simply shines. The same happens within us. Small daily moments of awareness slowly replace years of confusion. Little by little, fear gives way to clarity. Resentment gives way to compassion, and uncertainty gives way to quiet confidence. This becomes your transformation protocol. For the next 21 days, begin each morning by slowly speaking Abwun, then Nura, 3 times each. Pause for 1 minute of silent breathing afterward, allowing your heart to become aware of God's presence before beginning the day. Let this simple rhythm become your daily spiritual doorway. Lasting transformation is rarely created through extraordinary moments. It is built through faithful daily practice. The 6th Aramaic word is Schlama. It is commonly translated as peace, but Schlama means far more than the absence of conflict. It describes wholeness, restoration, harmony, and the return of everything within a person to its proper place. When Jesus spoke Schlama, he was not promising a life without storms. He was revealing an inner condition that could remain whole even while the storm continued outside. This is the peace anxiety cannot understand. Fear fragments the mind, pulling it toward imagined futures and painful memories. Schlama gathers those scattered parts and brings the soul back into the present, where divine guidance can finally be heard. Now we arrive at the seventh and final word, Ina Na, translated as I am. Ina expresses living presence and awakened identity. When Jesus declared Ina Na, he spoke from complete alignment with divine purpose, not from fear, uncertainty, or borrowed approval. Together, these 7 words form a spiritual journey. Abwun reveals the source. Malcuta reveals the kingdom. Shbaq releases the knots. Kushta restores living truth. Nura brings illumination. Schlama returns the soul to wholeness. Finally, Ina calls you to live consciously in the identity God has given you. These are not merely ancient sounds. They are invitations to breathe differently, forgive deeply, walk truthfully, and face life without surrendering your inner authority. Just a quick reminder, the transformation guides for a fuller life are waiting for you, right there in the comments. Before you leave, if this message touched your heart or brought new understanding into your life, WRITE, the word restoration in the comments below. Your testimony may encourage someone else who is seeking healing and renewal. Thank you for sharing this moment of ancient wisdom with us. Until the next revelation, walk in peace, walk in freedom, and walk in the power of Malcuta Behuben. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready! Because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation.